coming back to this kind of like people's basic freedoms being taken away from them. Like, I mean, we got, we need to kind of just step back and look at this. I mean, like, I mean, this is like, yeah, I mean, if you said to people 1.5 years ago, so before this whole pandemic
Mm,
started, that that the whole population of the UK and most of the world for that matter would have like their basic human freedoms taken away from them, not just for like a few days or a couple of weeks, but like for the best part of a whole year, for the sake of a sort of virus, some kind of pandemic. People would say, "Oh, what you mean? There's going to be something like Ebola virus, like because and that if you said no, 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 not for that, but for a virus that has a sort of that kills, well, that has a survival rate of between
mm,
99.5 and 99.8. People would think you're absolutely fucking insane. They would say, well, no way, like that's not going to happen for a virus that 99.8% of people survive. I mean, they would just think, people would say that that's insane. Like, but that is the situation we are now in, right? But most
mm,
people then seem to think that's kind of okay, like it's quite okay that all of our basic human rights have been taken away from us.
mm.
Like, I mean, not all of them, but I mean, uh, many of our
Yeah,
most basic. Well, yeah,
a lot.
well, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, we can't go. You're not even allowed to go around like other people's houses or flats, unless they're the one person that you've designated as your social support bubble. I mean, that's just like ridiculous. I mean, it's not just not being able to go to the pub and
Mm,
go to restaurants. Even that's terrible enough, right? Literally, you're not allowed to go around your friends'
mm.
houses, flats. That's just unbelievable. I mean, that's like on a par with, yeah. I mean, normally speaking, you would. I mean, even in, I'm sure, North Korea, people are probably allowed to go around each other's properties. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I think even in 1984, people are allowed to go around each other's flats, right? I don't think even George Orwell, when he wrote 1984, didn't imagine anything this bad. Like,
Yes, because you literally can't make it up, can you?
well, no, exactly. But I mean, I think we should talk about like the Great Barrington Declaration
Mm,
actually, because yeah, I mean, because that was when did that was back in the summer, wasn't it? So there was a professor from Stanford and a
yeah.
professor, I can't remember his name, and there was a professor from Oxford University, Sunitra Gupta.
Mm.
He was one of the people, and I don't know who else. Do you know who else was involved in that? You might know more about that than me, actually.
Uh, no, to be honest, I'm terrible with names, so I
Oh,
won't be able to tell you who signed it. But I know that
yeah.
initially, when it became kind of known, there was around 600
Yeah,
very well-known academics
yeah,
who signed it, and I think around 15,000 of medical workers, and
yeah,
I think something like 200,000 of concerned citizens. So 600 academics,
yeah,
like
yeah,
prominent academics
mm,
worldwide, is
yeah,
a serious number.
yeah,
We're talking immunologists, we're talking professors, we're talking world-class researchers.
yeah. And certainly the key people behind it. Like I think there was three or four key people that kind of that organized it all. And
Mm,
one of them was a professor from Stanford, I believe, an epidemiologist. One of them was our own Sunitra Gupta from Oxford
mm,
University, epidemiologist at Oxford
mm,
University, right? I mean, she's yeah, it doesn't get more prestigious than that. Stanford and Oxford, and these aren't
mm.
like these are people with epidemiology professors, so they're
Mm.
not like history professors or whatever.
Well, it beats Sage.
What, sorry?
It beats Sage committee, which
Yeah,
is made up primarily of statisticians,
yeah.
right? And behavioral scientists.
Yeah, and then also you've got like Carl Hennigan, who's the he wasn't one of the people that organized the Great Barrington Declaration. I'm pretty sure he would have signed it though. But he's been like, I mean, he's from the Oxford Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine, which is affiliated with Oxford University, right? this is like an incredibly sort of prestigious guy. He knows his stuff, and he's been pushing back on sort of lockdowns, like as in general lockdown that's applied to the whole population. He's been pushing back on that, but I mean, he's very. But all those voices. I mean, Sunitra Gupta, from what I hear, I mean, she's gone quiet now. She's just stopped sort of appearing on like discussion shows or yeah, I mean, she's just gone completely quiet because I think she was just vilified, like
Absolutely.
kind of like she probably got like death email, you know, threats by email. And I mean, she's just such a lovely woman. I mean, she's just, it's hard to imagine a more mild mannered, compassionate, decent
Mm,
human being than her. Like, but, you know, she's been sort of like, you know, forced into silence basically by the sort
mm,
of like the mob, you know, just for sort of, yeah, I mean, I just think that's appalling. And so to me, though, like what, I don't see what was wrong with like the strategy that was proposed by the Great Barrington Declaration, right, which was that to basically kind of shield the vulnerable groups and then let everyone else kind of carry on like as
mm,
normal. But obviously, if you know, maybe if people want to kind of do social distancing and like
mm,
constantly use hand sanitizer and wear masks, then let them do that. I mean, no one's going to stop people doing that, right?
mm,
Maybe you know, yeah. So yeah, you could have those kind of health measures in place, voluntary health measures for the you know for the large proportion of the population, and then shield those kind of at-risk groups, which is people over the age of 70 and
mm,
people with serious yeah, I mean that's what they proposed, and then they were kind of accused, and that to me, I don't see what's wrong with that. That just makes perfect sense because those are the people that are at risk. So they're the people that need to be protected. It doesn't make any sense to protect, you know, the whole population,
mm,
and also those groups of people. So people above 70, and also the I don't know people with underlying health conditions. They're well, certainly if you're talking about people above the age of 70, the vast majority of them are no longer economically active, right? So that's the other
mm,
thing as well. I mean, those people being shielded does not sort of cause the economy to grind to a halt because they're not out of work. They're not out
mm,
at work. So those people are not going to be losing their jobs or whatever because they don't work anyway. They're on their pensions, right?
mm.
So if you know, so I mean, yeah. So instead, you kind of lock down the entire population. Um, that just is completely does not make sense at all, actually.
No, it is absolutely insane and it doesn't make sense, but it doesn't matter. And these people have been shunned because they dared to speak against ideology.
Yeah, well,
And
that's
by that point in summer, we already were in the midst of this newly coined ideology. And it
yeah,
is such a powerful force, as I know from experience as
yeah,
somebody grown up in Soviet Union.
yeah,
You simply can't speak anything against it. You'll be destroyed by that force, and that's exactly what
yeah.
happened.
Yeah, no, that's it. It's yeah, you're right. It's a dogma, isn't it? It's a tyranny of dogma. It's
Mm,
basically there's a new dogma that this COVID thing, which in reality, um, primarily only affects certain groups of the population. I mean, it can kill younger people, but so can
mm,
flu. I mean, every year, people in their
mm,
20s, 30s, you know, even sometimes people without any underlying health condition, sometimes they die of flu. It's just, you know, it's quite rare, but it does happen. So there have been cases of people in their 20s and 30s
mm,
who've died of COVID, and some of whom apparently didn't have any underlying health condition. I mean, it might be that they did have some underlying health condition, but it wasn't known about. But it could just
yeah.
be, it could be that they didn't. But it's just like you know, shit happens, as they say. I mean, that's not to sound uncompassionate, but you know, but they're rare. Those events are rare, and then people, but
Mm,
perfect young healthy people die of flu every year, and
mm.
again, those cases are rare, right? So, you know,
But
yeah, so
that's a very problematic view at the moment because this ideology that we're talking about is based on absolute sanctity of human life, any life whatsoever, to such an extent
yeah,
that even mentioning of death is no longer acceptable. It
yeah,
seems like concept of death is no longer
yeah,
acceptable.
yeah.
Uh,
Just a
Wow.
shame that all of us have to die eventually. Like they seem to be forgetting
Oh,
that.
really?
Well, they haven't managed to count. They've cancelled a lot of things, like they've cancelled people who disagree with them, but they haven't managed to cancel death yet. Like that's going to be a tough nut to crack.
I'm sure they're working on it right now. There is a
Oh,
vaccine for it somewhere.
they are working on it, actually, but that's a whole nother, yeah, that's a whole nother discussion.